Hello and welcome to Sports Spotlight. We'll be reviewing the festive fixture schedule. I'm joined by IB Times UK sports editor Nick Howson. We'll start off with the title race at the top. Manchester City have now closed the gap on Chelsea after they beat Sunderland and Chelsea lost to Spurs. There's nothing to separate those two sides at the moment going into 2015. So just how exciting is this two-horse title race going to be now?
Yeah, to an extent. Manchester City have closed that gap, so they had a relatively, bar the draw against Burnley, but really they should be almost 2 points ahead given how they slipped up there and really should have taken all 3 points from that game. It's exciting to an extent. I would still say that you'll be hard pressed to find people who would genuinely tip Manchester City to win the title. Yes, they're without two of their best players. They're going to be without Yaya Toure for nearly maybe a month, depending on how Ivory Coast do in the African Cup of Nations as well. Yet you'll still be hard pressed to find someone who would say Manchester City are the favourites. Chelsea have still been the outstanding team this year. Yet their advantage, and albeit alphabetically at the moment, is not reflected in how good they've been this season. It's not good. It doesn't reflect how good their squad is either. I still think it's the best in the league. So it's an interesting race. I wouldn't go as far as say it's exciting. I still think it's predictable that Chelsea will still win it. However, in 3 months' time, we'll find out how genuinely exciting it might be. And the two teams, of course, play each other in a couple of weeks as well. So we'll see how that goes. I'd say Chelsea's still the outstanding favourites for me, bookmakers have already paid out. And I don't think they'll be regretting that decision just yet.
Moving on to the rest of the table, the other sides, the annual managerial merry-go-round finally kicked in over the Christmas period. We saw Alan Irvin replaced by Tony Pulis at West Brom, Neil Warnock replaced by Alan Pardew at Crystal Palace, and that leaves the managerial seat vacant at Newcastle. What impact will these changes have?
Well, I think it's quite simple. Again, a bit like Chelsea with the title. I think it's very difficult to find a core group of people who would think that now West Bromwich Albion are going to be in the relegation mire for too much longer under Tony Pulis. Seeing what he did with Stoke when he brought them up, seeing what he did with Crystal Palace last season, transformed that team from a dull and boring team. They were in some ways quite enterprising towards the back end of the season. They stayed up quite comfortably. So it would be quite difficult, as long as they keep hold of Saido Berahino in the January transfer window. I think it would be difficult to see West Brom in that bottom three come May. I think it's slightly more complicated at Crystal Palace and Newcastle United. I think the Alan Pardew appointment comes across as sentimental in some ways. It's trying to keep the supporters happy. Steve Parish has moved. I mean, I don't think anyone really questioned the removal of Neil Warnock there. I think the penny has probably finally dropped there in terms of I don't think he's capable at that Premier League level, regardless of what he's achieved in the Championship, and he should be praised for that. But in the top flight, it just doesn't work for him, and hasn't worked for him. But the appointment of Pardew, whose reputation at Newcastle has never been great, in spite of, again, the reputation of Mike Ashley and the restraints that he's been under there, and it's never really felt like a genuine fit there. So it's a curious appointment. When it comes to Newcastle United, the one real issue that's already sort of reared its head is the fact that there aren't many genuine contenders who could take the job. A lot of people already ruling themselves out, like Steve Bruce, like Frank de Boer, who I think both of whom would have fitted probably quite well. So at the moment, it's quite difficult to see. Newcastle are traditionally a selling club. Mike Ashley is the owner, and all that's going on with him and Rangers as well doesn't make it a particularly attractive proposition. Newcastle already comfortably mid-table. They're not going to be involved in a relegation battle, it seems. However, there aren't a great deal. I wouldn't say it's particularly attractive at this stage.
And finally, Liverpool captain Steven Gerrard has announced that he is to leave the club at the end of the season. He's been this inspirational Tasmanic figure for the Merseysiders. Just how will he be remembered by Liverpool supporters, and how much of a hole will he leave in the side after his departure? There's
no doubt that in the era of the Premier League, he's Liverpool's greatest ever player in this sort of 22 year period. Absolutely no doubt about that. In terms of Liverpool greatness overall, you're going to struggle to, despite his heroics in that 2005 Champions League final and everything that's come with it, you'll find, I think, struggle to convince many people that his impact is greater than, say, Kenny Dalglish. Particularly, of course, as Kenny came back as manager and was awfully successful there as well. Without a league title to his name, he may well that title may well just evade him in terms of the greatest Liverpool player. In terms of trying to actually fill the void, might be slightly easier than people might surmise initially. Gerrard's influence in the team when he's played has not been particularly important. If anything, in some ways, he's hindered the team. Liverpool's best performance, in fact, came when he was left on the bench against Swansea in that 4-1 win earlier in the week. So, yeah, filling his place in the squad might not be too difficult in terms of actual footballing. But obviously, he's an inspirational figure, and Brendan Rodgers will be under pressure to bring in a marquee addition. Whether A, you even be able to find a like for like, and B, how long have Liverpool actually not had that driving force in midfield from Gerrard, probably for quite maybe a couple of years now. So I don't think too much onus should be put on trying to replace him. I think we should just try and remember how brilliant a player he was, how he lit up a European final in a way that maybe few English players have ever done and will ever do, and maybe just leave it at that.
Well, to follow all our sports coverage, go to our website, ivytimes.co.uk/sport.